We're over halfway through the NBA regular season, and after months of unexpected rises from young stars and disappointing starts from once considered contenders, I think we finally reached the point where we can properly analyze each team. So today, we're going to grade every Western Conference team based on their performance through the first half of the season. But before we get started, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you want to see me go through the Eastern Conference. So without further ado, let's get started by talking about the teams in the Pacific Division. A team that came into the season with championship or bust expectations was the now 24-25 Lakers, but so far through the season, they've been struggling despite LeBron and Anthony Davis staying relatively healthy. And there's a number of reasons why, the biggest of them all being three-point shooting. The Lakers attempt a league-low 33s per game and shoot only 35% from behind the arc, which is 25th in the NBA. Compare that to what they allow, which is almost 38 threes a game on 38% shooting, and it's clear why the Lakers have one of the 10 worst net ratings in the league. The only bright spots on this team are LeBron James somehow defeating Father Time yet again, and Anthony Davis continuing to play at an all-NBA level. But other than that, guys like Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell, while playing better now, are not playing at the level we expected them to. And free agent signings Christian Wood and Gabe Vincent are absolutely abysmal. So because of that, I'm giving the Lakers a D, but you and I both know this team is making at least one trade before February's trade deadline that will likely bring them within the top 8 of the standings. Another extremely disappointing team has been the Golden State Warriors, who are currently 12th in the West with a 20-25 record. There's been a lot of drama surrounding this team, from Draymond Green getting suspended indefinitely to Jonathan Kuminga losing trust in head coach Steve Kerr. And what's worse in this drama is the lackluster play from Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson, and Chris Paul recently breaking his hand and being ruled out until late February. It's just been an all-around mess for this Warriors team, as even Steph Curry's 27 points per game on 45, 40, and 90 shooting can't save them. I'm going to give the Warriors season as a whole an F, because nothing seems to be going in this team's favor. All eyes are on what the Warriors are going to be doing next, with a trade seemingly ever more likely as the losses continue to pile up. But will they be able to part ways with the core that brought this franchise 4 championships? That answer remains to be seen, but for the future of the Warriors organization, I truly hope they do. A team that's made a complete 180 on their season is the Los Angeles Clippers, who are 4th in the West with 30-15 record. You can go back and hear my instant reaction to the James Harden trade, and there, you'll hear someone who isn't sold on this idea, someone who thinks that the trade is going to backfire. But I have to admit, through the first 2 months, this trade experiment has worked completely, and I'm going to give the credit to Ty Lue. Lue has the task of dealing with the personalities of 4 stars, 4 guys who are shot creators, and through their careers are 20-point-per-game scorers. But ever since Russell Westbrook has been coming off this bench, the Clippers team has been lights out, with Paul George and Kawhi operating as main scorers, James Harden acting as a shot creator and facilitator, and Russell Westbrook leading the bench unit. The 2 main takeaways are that the 4 stars look to be on the same page, and that this team is great at shooting and defense, which of course are 2 of the most important aspects in the game of basketball. Because of this, I have to give the Clippers an A, and I might regret this, but I could totally see them making a deep run in the playoffs. Up next are the Sacramento Kings, who are 5th in the West with a 27-18 record, and the story with this team has been De'Aaron Fox taking another jump and transforming into a 28-point-per-game scorer while shooting almost 39% from 3. His efforts, along with the consistently good Domantas Sabonis, have kept the Kings as one of the best offenses in the league. The Kings are an interesting team to grade, because they're seeded higher than I thought they would be, but they've been playing slightly worse than last season. Despite being a top 5 seed, they have a net negative rating, and on average allow 118 points per game. Their style of play is effective on a night-to-night basis, but there are clear problems with how they can sustain allowing so many points per night in the playoffs. This is a good team, but one that has a ceiling. Nevertheless, I'm still going to give the Kings a B because many expected them to regress, yet they're still in the top third of the West. To close out the Pacific Division, let's talk about the Phoenix Suns, who are 6th in the West with a 27-20 record. The storyline with this Suns team is health. Their big three of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal have only played a handful of games together. And while they looked good in those games, this team is too injury prone to make any noise in the West. It's almost expected at this point that one of their three will go down with an injury every couple of weeks and halt any momentum that the Suns have. But despite this is a team that gets to the line a lot and shoots the ball well, and that combination is normally good for team success. In a way, it's impressive that this team is still in the playoff hunt with the numerous injuries to their stars. And recently, they've been playing a lot better when their stars are healthy. So because of that, I'm going to give the Suns a B. But I wouldn't be shocked if the injury bug stays away for at least another month or two, and they jump even higher in the Western Conference. Let's move on to the Northwest Division and start off by talking about one of the hottest teams in basketball, the Utah Jazz. I'll admit that at the beginning of the season, I was not a fan of this Jazz team, but boy have they made me eat my words, and there's a couple of reasons why. First and foremost, their head coach Will Hardy has officially entered my top 5 head coaches in the NBA today. You could say I'm overreacting, but just listen to some of these stats. This team is a below average shooting team, turns the ball over the most in the league, and allows the 7th most points per game. But somehow, someway, this team is 24-25, and that's with one of the 8 least talented rosters in the entire league. But despite not having the talent the teams surrounding the Jazz in the standings have, what makes this Jazz team so great is that they've all bought into the team and each other. Utah is below average in every single major category except 2, and that's total rebounds per game, which they're second in the NBA in, and putback points, which is at 26 points per 100 possessions, or first in the NBA. These aren't the stats that are entirely based on skill. It's based on effort and basketball IQ, which the Jazz have plenty of. If you look at this season as a whole, it's been a success for the Jazz. The only thing I'll say is that I would like to see more Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh, but that clearly hasn't affected Utah's current day success. So with all of that considered, I'm going to give the Jazz a B. Next, let's talk about the team that sits atop the Western Conference, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The story with this team is defense, headlined by the presumptive Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert, who has anchored the Timberwolves to the best defense in the entire league. Minnesota leads the league in allowing the lowest shot makes per game, lowest field goal percentage per game, least rebounds per game, and least points per game. It's not often you see one of the 3 best teams in the league be centered completely around defense while having a statistically average offense. But make no mistake, the Timberwolves can score with the best of them, as evidenced by Anthony Edwards' raw scoring ability and Karl Anthony Towns being the best 3-point shooting center of all time. The goal in Minnesota is simple, and that's to win a title. That's why they gave up 6 first-round picks to get Rudy Gobert on the team. But it's a little concerning that only one team since 2010 has won the NBA title while having the best defense in the league, and that team was the 2015 Golden State Warriors, who also boasted the 2nd best offense in the NBA. For their season as a whole, their grade is undoubtedly an A+, but I have my concerns for their title aspirations. Going from one of the best teams in the league to one of the worst teams in the league, the Portland Trail Blazers have been a complete disappointment this season. And it's not because of their 14-33 record, which was completely expected. When the Trailblazers traded away their franchise star Damian Lillard before the season, we all knew Portland would begin a rebuild. And the future seemed bright when they selected Scoot Henderson 3rd overall in the 2023 draft to join 24-year-old Anthony Simons and 20-year-old Shaedon Sharpe as a part of their future core. But this season has been an absolute disaster, as Simons has been on and off again hurt, and Sharpe and Henderson have been disappointing to say the least. To go along with that, DeAndre Ayton has been underwhelming, Malcolm Brogdon is certainly to getting traded within the next 3 seasons, and Jeremy Grant, while having a good year, is making $30+ million and is going to be hard to trade when they eventually decide they want to. I would say this season for the Trailblazers has been a complete disaster, and for all the reasons above, I'm going to give them a D-. Next, let's talk about the defending champs, the Denver Nuggets, who are putting in an adequate title defense so far through the season. We all know how good Nikola Jokic is, and I could go on for 15 minutes about how great he is, but I'll spare you from that and instead talk about some aspects of this team that concerns me. First of all, the Nuggets are pulling a classic defending champs move and coasting through the regular season. That's not a problem with that right now because they're still a top 3 seed in the West. But my concern is whether or not they're going to be able to flip that switch come playoff time. Again, they have some great players, and we know they can step up in the playoffs when needed. But the question here is, will they? Another concern I have that falls under the same category of coasting through the regular season is their transition stats. In the past 3 seasons, the Nuggets have had a top 10 transition offense, but this season they rank dead last in the entire NBA. It might have something to do with preserving themselves for the playoffs, but this isn't something to just blow past. With all that being said, this is still the same core that breezed through the playoffs last season, and even with all of my aforementioned concerns, this is still the best team in the West. So taking everything into consideration, I'm giving the Nuggets an A with the potential to get a higher grade if they lock in and grab that first seed. And to finish out this division is the surprise team of the season, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who sit with the second best record in the West with one of the youngest teams in the NBA. What makes this Thunder team so special is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who has blossomed into a superstar, someone who puts up 31 points a night and comes up big in clutch situations. His leadership abilities and will to win on a nightly basis has been huge not only for the team, but for his overall development as a player. Joining SGA on the Thunder is Jalen Williams, or J-Dub, who is quickly becoming the most underrated player in NBA circles, as he's a second-year player putting up 18 points a game while shooting over 44% from behind the arc. And also Chet Holmgren, the 7'2" big man with a point guard skill set, who puts up 17 a game as a 38% three-point shooter while bringing elite post defense, something the Thunder have desperately needed. Everything is looking up in Oklahoma City, but there's always something to nitpick. And for the Thunder, they have a big hole on their team. If you take away Holmgren, the Thunder are lacking in the size department, as evidenced by the fact that Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, but the other Jalen Williams, is their backup center, and he's only 6'9". These size concerns have haunted the Thunder the entire season, as they're third to last in the NBA in total rebounding and allow the 5th most rebounds per game. These problems could be glossed over in the regular season when your opponent changes night to night. But when you're in the playoffs against a center like Nikola Jokic or Anthony Davis, and the opposing coaching staff has 7 games to plan against your weakness, things are probably not going to end well. Regardless of that weakness, the Thunder are still a really good team, and the fact that they're this good deserves an A+ for the season. To close things out, let's talk about the Southwest Division, home of the Memphis Grizzlies, who after 2 straight seasons of finishing as the 2nd seed in the West, have cannonballed to a below 500 record past the halfway mark of the season. To be fair to the Grizzlies, they've dealt with injuries to some of their top players like John Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, and Steven Adams. It's been a tough season for Grizzlies fans, but hear me out. Was this the best thing to happen to this season? Now, I would never wish injury on any player, and I hope all the Grizzlies' injured players get back fully healthy. But let's be honest here, this core was never going to compete for a title, much less make it to the NBA Finals. There's some solid pieces, but this team is missing something that keeps them from contendership status. And they may have found it in Gigi Jackson, the former number 1 overall high school recruit in the class of 2023, before reclassifying to the class of 2022 and getting drafted in the 2nd round by the Grizzlies in the 2023 draft. And because of the ridiculous amount of injuries the Grizzlies have gone through so far through the season, Jackson has gotten more playing time and he's been lights out the past 10 games or so. So if you take Jackson and the likely top 10 pick the Grizzlies will have next season, and you add back the core that got the Grizzlies the 2nd seed in 2022, there might be some magic in Memphis come 2025. Because we're grading the Grizzlies on this season alone, I'm going to have to give them a D. But make no mistake here, I'm a firm believer the Grizzlies will get back on track next season. Now let's talk about the New Orleans Pelicans, or the hardest team in all of basketball to read. There's one version of the Pelicans that look like world beaters, the team that in January defeated the Timberwolves by double digits and the Jazz and Warriors by over 30 points. Then there's the other version of the Pelicans, the one we've seen this past week, that's lost 3 of their last 4, all by 14 or more points to the Suns, Thunder, and Bucks. It's concerning to me that the Pelicans either win by 15 or lose by 15, and I'd say the biggest reason why they're so inconsistent is that they don't have that number 1 guy. If you look at the box scores and watch this team play, it's pretty clear that the Pelicans win when their entire team is hitting their shots. They don't rely on Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson to put up monster numbers to secure a win. They need guys like Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, and Najee Marshall to get 10 to 20 points apiece. But if only one or two of those four players are hitting their shots, Ingram and Williamson just don't have that switch to demand the ball and score. It's a change of pace from the other teams in this conference that have guys like LeBron, Booker, KD, Fox, Shea, and Luka, guys who could jumpstart a run just based on them scoring 12 points in a row. It's ironic that I'm saying this now because I actually really like this Pelicans team construction. It's always a good sign to me when a team has 8 to 10 guys that they can throw out nightly that won't screw up a lot. But if the Pelicans continue their playoff woes this season, it may be time to explore some trades and shake things up. For this season, I would give the Pelicans a B because while they've been a solid team overall, I just feel like this roster and group of names together should just be a little bit better. One of my favorite teams to watch this season has been the Houston Rockets, who have looked much improved following the hiring of head coach Ime Udoka and the acquisition of Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. The key to a team succeeding in the NBA is having a culture. Every great team in the league has one, and ever since James Harden and Mike D'Antoni left the Rockets, Houston has been lacking a culture. But because of the new acquisitions and the emergence of third-year star Alperen Şengün, Houston has started to turn things around, all thanks to a defensive culture implemented by Udoka. The Rockets boast a top 5 defense in the entire league, which is impressive considering the amount of young talent on this team, and you can attribute that to a couple of key guys: Fred VanVleet, Jae'Sean Tate, Dillon Brooks, and one of the most underrated players in the entire league, Jabari Smith Jr. It's unfortunate that Smith had a subpar rookie season because he's been stellar this season, improving his field goal percentage from 41% to 47%, and his three-point shooting from 31% to 38%. He's been the key to the Rockets' success defensively as a versatile, lengthy forward, and a piece that comes up big in close games. It's clear that the Rockets will be one of the 4 best teams in the West within the next 5 seasons. But for this season, despite improving drastically, they still fall below 500 and show their youthness from time to time. From that reason, I'm giving the Rockets a B+, but like I said, they're going to be good real soon. Next up are the Spurs, who sit at the bottom of the Western Conference, despite having the Rookie of the Year favorite Victor Wembanyama. Wemby had some big expectations coming into the league, and he's absolutely crushed it, putting up 21 points and 10 boards a night while being one of the most feared rim protectors in the entire league. It's honestly a marvel to watch Wemby every night. It just sucks that his team is awful. If you go through it, the top 7 guys on this team are below average shooters at best. There's no primary ball handler worth of starting time. Nobody but Wemby has been defending at an above average level, and nobody knows how to get the ball to Wemby, who's open 90% of the time. This team has somehow regressed despite getting objectively better with the Wemby and Cedi Osman addition. It's rare to see a franchise screw up having one of the greatest rookies of the 21st century, but somehow the Spurs of all franchises did it. So for this season, I'm giving San Antonio an F, and I hope they can grab some talent to surround Wemby in the draft and free agency. And finally, let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks, who are currently the 7th seed in the West solely because of Luka and Kyrie's play. I mean, it's ridiculous what these two guys have been doing, especially Luka, who's putting up the least talked about 35 point per game season I've ever seen. But what makes this team even better to me is how they've surrounded those two stars with guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., who's the clear frontrunner for 6th Man of the Year, Derek Lively, who's been an impactful rim protector as a rookie, Dante Exum, who's gone through a complete career resurgence as a great all-around player, and Derek Jones Jr., who's proved that he's much more than a dunker as the person who started the most games on the team. Now with all of that, I would like to see a little more from Grant Williams and Jaden Hardy, but that's not the reason why this team is still in the play-in right now. The reason why is because this team cannot stay healthy. The Mavericks rotation has missed a combined 111 games this season because of injury, and even with that, they're still one of the most competitive teams in the league. As long as the Mavericks core guys can stay healthy during their playoff run, they're going to be a hard team to bounce from the playoffs, especially if we get playoff Luka and Kyrie. Based on the regular season, I'd give the Mavericks a B, but I could easily see this team making another conference finals run as long as they're healthy. And with that, the Western Conference has been analyzed and graded. Now it's your turn to like this video and subscribe if you want to see me do this breakdown with the Eastern Conference. Until then, I'm Julian with TalkBackSports, and I'll see you next time.